The Building Brands podcast is dedicated to exploring the journeys of industry leaders who have successfully built a brand. Join me, Robert Royer, president of Building Brands Marketing, and an entrepreneur who has successfully scaled multiple brands as we dive deep into the strategies, challenges, and insights that have shaped the success of industry leaders and provide you with the resources you need to do the same. Building Brands Marketing is a full-service marketing agency specializing in crafting customized marketing strategies for service-based businesses with a creative powerhouse to drive real results. Welcome to the Building Brands Podcast. Welcome to the Legal Leader Series of the Building Brands Podcast. Today, we welcome Tatyana Gray, attorney and founder of Attorney Tatyana, as well as the Summit Legacy Law Firm. Welcome, Tatyana.
Hi, welcome, and thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm really excited about our conversation.
Absolutely, likewise. So I know in talking with you leading up to today's show, you've built two distinct brands, Summit Legacy Law and Attorney Tatyana. So talk to me about what inspired you to launch the second brand, which was Attorney Tatyana, and how you identified the opportunity behind creating that personal brand.
Yes, so it's a little bit of a long story, but I'll cut it as short as I can. I actually came back to the legal career recently after raising my kids and being involved in some other pursuits. And so I launched my traditional law practice for the second time in my career. And I live in a small, very touristy area. It's called Sun Valley. It's a ski resort, and we only have maybe 20,000 people here. So I just launched initially with a vision of being kind of your country lawyer, just doing your normal lawyer things, even though my focus was on estate planning, but very traditional in the way that, even putting an ad in the newspaper and then using a lot of my personal connections to get my name out. And that is all fine and great, and I really enjoy doing that. But I also have a tech background. My undergraduate degree is in computer science, and I worked for a Fortune 500 company as a programmer early on in my career, and seeing everything exploding with AI nowadays, and just getting a vision of how AI can change the legal industry. And I think with that, having a personal brand is just going to be crucial. Aside from this traditional law practice, your personal brand, your personal name is going to mean more than your law firm name. And so that is what got me excited about exploring other visions and kind of looking into what can a personal lawyer brand be and offer, and how it can grow and monetize in this kind of current environment and in the next, what we see on the horizon.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I agree with that. But it creates somewhat of a conflict, right? You have this corporate brand, your original law firm, and then the personal brand, Attorney Tatyana. So how do you balance the messaging between the two to not dilute either one?
Yes. So first of all, these are two separate legal entities. Just doing some research, I decided that it's best to really start a completely separate legal entity for my personal brand. So my law firm is just organized like you would organize, most law firms in this country. I think it's a PLLC, and I operate, with a trust account, IOTA account, and all the rules and regulations as lawyers, practicing law, giving legal advice that we have to apply. I'm licensed in Idaho, Utah as well, so my practice is limited in that regard to that. The Attorney Tatyana brand is a completely separate legal entity, and because I don't give legal advice in the traditional sense through that entity, there is more that I'm leveraging as far as social media, and I'm just trying to explore other ways for marketing that business and monetizing that business. And so just keeping that in a line of separation, that the actual law clients, like estate planning and business contract clients, they all go through my legal entity Summit Legacy Law with everything that is legally, ethically required under that. And Attorney Tatyana right now is really exploring other ways in how to really operate this personal lawyer brand in this brave new world that we live in.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, for either firms, Tatiana, what marketing strategies have been most effective for new client acquisition?
Yeah, so like I said, with my traditional firm, and I'm unique in a way that I'm in such a small valley. So what has been effective here, like I said, even newspaper ads, like nobody's doing newspaper ads by and large, again, because it's unique to my geography. And I think that is where in a modern world as lawyers or any business owners, we just have to really be flexible, and we have to really either think outside of the box, and maybe outside of the box is a newspaper ad. I think we have to be adjusting to our environment and to really understand our environment. Aside from the newspaper, I think personal relationships are always key, and regardless of what type of business, regardless of the geography, big city, small town, personal locations are key. When I first opened up, I just went to some of my friends who were other professionals like insurance agents, um, or financial advisors, and I just offered to do seminars on estate planning specifically. And so they were, kind enough. They wanted to help me with my launch. And so they would bring me in, and I would give presentations on estate planning to their existing clients or their prospects. And that was really a great way for me to launch my practice, pick up clients kind of pretty quickly. And then I started branching out. I've exhausted the list of my friends in our small valley who could do that for me. So then I started looking at networking with similar professionals, and then looking at nonprofits. Our valley has a lot of nonprofits, and so just approaching different nonprofits and seeing how my legal services, just how really educating about legal services can benefit their patrons. And so I've had quite a few successful presentations to these nonprofits in my valley that really helped to bring my name, the awareness about my practice out there, and led to a few clients. What I've noticed with nonprofits, if anybody wants to go that route, I mean, they usually have huge email lists and huge audience, so they will bring in a lot of people. In my experience, they don't want you to kind of sell, so I found that limiting in a way. But for starting out, those were really like personal connections, and presentations were key.
Yeah, there's a real varied approach to some of these strategies you're describing, and it's not a one size fits all. I talk about this all the time, especially when you look at different regional demographics, rural communities compared to urban. There's a lot of things that may not be as conducive or much be or might be much less cost effective in large, metro markets that are cost effective in rural markets. I actually, I come from a print background. I talk about that sometimes on this show. I started uh, out in the newspaper industry, and that was the first agency I worked for. And I do believe, print ads have a time and a place in certain markets, certain demographics, depending on who you're trying to reach, especially in those small rural markets like you're describing. And by that same token, I think that even in larger markets, there can be some traditional tactics that can be really effective if deployed correctly. A lot of when you get to larger metro markets, a lot of it is very hyper targeted and hyper focused on individual people. That hey, this is the section of this market that we know is our demographic, and we're going to try to target those. But Tatiana, you've built a brand from the ground up. And I'm curious, you talk about some of the strategies that have been successful for you. What are some of the largest branding challenges that you've had?
Um, that's an interesting question. I like to try things, and so um, here locally, um, some of the Facebook ads were actually quite a flop. So that was not, my expectation. I still believe as I'm taking my practice, I'm taking it throughout Idaho, more into our capital, Boise, where I'm spending more time because I just recently got married and my husband is in Boise, so we're kind of going back and forth. So I'm tapping into that market, and definitely things like Facebook advertising seems to be more effective there. But it was a flop on our small kind of valley level here with 20,000 people.
Understood. Well, let's touch on the hot topic really quickly. Let's get into the interesting stuff, AI and law. All right. So, talk to me, Tatyana, a little bit about, for other lawyers or business owners or executives that would be listening to this show or watching this show. How is AI changing the pace of their business? And, give us your feedback on how you've integrated AI into the daily operations of your firm.
Yeah, so I think AI is going to, we see it's disrupting industries already, and it's only like, it's not stopping, it's only going to get more disruptive that way. And I think just trying to envision it from what I'm listening, I'm trying to consume some of the AI news and just to understand it better. And the consensus, I think, is that nobody knows where it's going. Like, nobody can predict, because it's starting to just so rapidly invade every area of our lives. And I think for most of us, it probably started with ChatGPT and like revise my email, make my email sound more polished, or um, find grammar mistakes or something like that. And now we've moved so far beyond this, and we see some legal tools coming into the space and offering AI integrations. And I think that's just scratching the surface. Now we hear all the talk about AI agents. So we're moving from just kind of this chat bot where we have a text and we are typing back and forth with AI, with a large language model. Now it's all about these agents that are autonomous in some way and can do a lot of the thinking. And so I think what I see, kind of what I want to implement in my practice, and this is the side of the brand, I think like every law practice, I see creating this intake agent, because that is one of the biggest bottlenecks for lawyers. We have to do intake.
Definitely.
And that's right. It's not like, I don't know anybody who thinks like intake is the fun part of the profession. So,
Haven't heard it yet.
so exactly. And so I envision that there'll be companies there that will be selling us these intake agents. And for now, there are probably going to be kind of chatbot type of agents where you're typing back and forth, or it's on your website and your potential client is typing back and forth, interacting with this agent, and the agent dynamically knows what questions to ask. So it's not going to be a static form where you have to pre-think the questions. The agent is going to dynamically adjust and ask them better, deeper questions based on where they're coming from. And in a number of years, and not that many years, like this, I can see how this is going to be an actual avatar. And you can create your own avatar, or you can pick an avatar from a choice of avatars. And then your client who's doing an intake, who's therefore an intake, would be interacting like you and I, but it will be, instead of you or me, it will be an AI agent doing the intake, and it's going to be very dynamic. And then I think that agent would pass it on to the next agent. That would be your actual like attorney agent that would do a lot of your attorney work. And I know the bar constantly keeps talking about, there are issues there. We hear about the hallucinations, and the attorney will become the ultimate reviewer and quality check on the work that the AI agent does. Um, and so I think that's where like I'm gearing my law practice to go that way. And that's where I think the personal brand becomes invaluable, because of hiring associates, maybe before you would need 5 associates. Now you can have one associate that is really doing a lot of this quality kind of oversight, and the AI agents are drafting all of the documents and or pleadings, and as the attorney, your job is to make sure that it's correct.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, Tatiana. And see, the thing about it for me that I believe is fascinating and going to provide a more competitive landscape is it's going to allow the small mom and pop law firms to compete at the same level of some of the big law firms. And the reason being is, the cost of an AI agent is apples to apples between big law and
Yeah.
mom and pop firm. But it used to be you would have to have 5, 10 employees. Some just that intake example, that alone might be a handful of employees. And right now that is already being done in certain industries that we work with, where they're using an AI agent. Even in some cases, it's just strictly through text messages that they're asking a series of questions to then provide to the live rep, who then follows up from there, and they have their intake information. And that alone provides a more competitive landscape, I think. And so it's going to shift the industry where there's going to be a larger focus on service and final output. And I'm hearing law firms that are introducing client success managers in the middle, that are just a messenger essentially from A to C and connecting B in the middle, to provide that accessibility component that a lot of law firms struggle with. That's generally speaking, when you talk to people about lawyers, and if you ask them something about their lawyer, they go, "Oh, I'm trying to get a hold of them. I've been trying to get a hold of them for weeks," and they
Yeah.
couldn't get an answer. And a lot of times it's because there's no updates. The update is there's no
Hmm.
updates.
Yeah.
And they just need someone to tell them that. So there's a lot of different ways that this is evolving the small mom and pop practice, in my opinion. Now, one thing that I know is very critical with AI. I use AI on a daily basis. We incorporate it into our business. I teach a workshop. I talk about it a lot on this show called Scaling the Unscalable, the secrets to scaling a service-based business. And in that workshop, one of the segments, I share a prompt with everybody that's participating in the workshop, and it's a brand voice prompt. And when people think about AI, they think about simplicity and how it can do all the hard work for you. And the reality is, what crafts some of the best content I've ever created has been a really, really thorough and extensive brand voice prompt that I start with. And when I've shared that in the workshop, some of the attendees go, "Wow, I've never put in a prompt that detailed and that long."
Hmm.
They're used to just saying, "Hey, write me a social media post about this and put 10 hashtags or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, and so I know from my personal use of AI and really maximizing output, it has a lot to do with input. So I'm curious, how does prompting affect where AI is going in the legal industry? And also, I know there's some controversy behind putting personal information potentially out there, who owns it, so on and so forth. Could you give me a little bit of legal insight on what you're seeing in the legal industry as it relates to AI prompting?
Well, I think one big thing to understand is that we going to become expert prompters in the legal way, because with building these agents, and I know that it can be like very abstract and maybe understand, but an agent is just, it's a node, it's like it's a box, input, output, there's some brain power. And so it's the inside, the prompt lives inside of this box, and the prompt tells this box how to think. Part of it is brand voice, especially if we have like social media stuff. We definitely want to have this brand voice. But if we're talking about preparing documents, then the brand voice probably does not play as much into that. You want to be, a professional. You want your documents to sound like, lawyer has drafted them, and on the contracts you can, I like to say that less legalese, so lay people can understand what the contract says. But aside from that, I think for an attorney to create a prompt for your firm, you would sit down, and I think you would spend a few hours, and you would be constantly revising it to really, if you are in the estate planning, say it's an estate planning prompt to generate some kind of estate planning document, you want to make sure that your AI agent knows that they are to act as an estate planning attorney. And then you start telling them, what is your state? You want to make sure they understand what is the state law you're operating in. You want the agent to make sure to reference statute. You want the agent to reference potentially case law. And again, there's some issues that we know about with hallucinations and stuff like that. So that's why a human attorney has to always review this. But this is building this prompt. If you are in federal, if you're an IP, having your agent reference specific code, federal code or tax code. So as the attorney, I think your job is going to be writing the strongest prompts possible. And I think that is, it might be moving into this trade secret area, because if I hire an AI agency to come build this agent for me, they will be doing all of the tech stuff, but the prompt is on you as the lawyer. And I think we would want to at least be putting into our contracts that the agency, the AI automation agency, cannot take my prompt and then go to another estate planning law firm, 100 miles away and sell them this implementation with my prompt, right? We are going to be safeguarding our prompts because we're going to be working on them and then we're going to be refining them. And I think that is where the law will have to catch up on how we can protect our prompts.
All right. Well, this has been exciting, informational. Thank you for the education here. But where can our viewers and listeners find out more about your firms online, Tatyana?
Yes, my law firm has a website, summitlegacylaw.com. It's pretty static. I am really on Instagram, pretty active on Instagram, and that is at attorney Tatyana. And my name is spelled Tatyana, a little bit non-traditional. And I actually am going to prepare a one-pager for your listeners. If they're interested, they can come to my Instagram, attorney Tatyana, and if they DM me prompt, I will send them this document where I'll talk more about a prompt and the elements of the prompt and just fill in a little bit of this legal stuff, like prompting your state where you're practicing or area of the law. So your listeners can take that document and just kind of use it as a template if they want to try and give ChatGPT a spin.
Very cool. Thanks for that. Yeah, so that's on Instagram at attorney Tatyana, Tatyana, Tatyana. Tatyana, thanks for being on the show again. It's been a pleasure and a privilege.
Thank you so much, Robert. This was so wonderful and great to hear your thoughts as well. I love talking to thought leaders in our industry.